came into EARTHBOX, I had the expectation of I'm just gonna come here and just feel and just see this place. But I never expected to find stillness.
The story of EARTHBOX began 500 million years ago, before the dinosaurs, in a time of continental upheaval, before mountains were dissolved away to form the earth that's around us right now. Right up until a couple of humans thought that they could carve a space in the earth and make room for people to come in and reconnect with themselves and with the earth itself in whatever way that might mean to them.
One of the questions that everybody always asks is, how did you come up with this idea? Really, this feels like 10 years of work that have gone into getting to this point. I wanted to create these immersive spaces and these immersive experiences that were sort of jaw-dropping and goose-pimping and completely unique. And the Dream Commission was the first big step in this. When Brad signed up, there was chemistry, we were speaking the same language, using sensory language. So I knew that he was the right person. One afternoon we were sitting on my patio, and personally I was stressing a little bit. There was just a lot of pressure on this brainstorming because now it's the first idea and it needs to be amazing. And I can only describe it like something just landed on my lap, and I just said, well, what if we could create an experience in the earth? And in my mind at the time it was in a forest and almost like a cube that you could go into and that the earth would be behind glass. And Brad just said, well, what if there was no glass? And it was raw earth walls. And that was just the beginning, and then it just spitballed from there. And I remember feeling this enormous adrenaline rush. I felt like on fire, like my heart was pumping, and I felt so just energized and high. The physical response in my body was just extraordinary. And the very first day we got a cardboard box and cut it up to add texture, and effectively created what is not a million miles away from what exists today. Well, in that first model we had toilets underground and a decompression chamber and a couple of other things which didn't quite materialize. We were really so focused on the experience and creating, how do you create this experience like inside the earth? We didn't at that stage realize that we were embarking upon a serious engineering and construction project.
It's very challenging working with this incredible medium.
So we started researching a bit, found out that there was such a thing called geotechnical engineering, and that these were the engineers that actually worked in the earth. So we set up a meeting with Patrick Beals from AECOM.
I heard some stories from others that had been approached about this crazy concept of what they wanted to do. As soon as I saw it, I found it fascinating. We became engineers to study and to solve problems, and this was a really unique one. Big basement structures would have heavy engineering in it, big grey concrete walls and big structural units that you'll be seeing. whereas the EARTHBOX needed a gentler touch to see open earth and be able to actually touch it. You don't see that in any basements you'll ever walk in or park your car in.
Brad had managed to secure a geological map of the peninsula, which we could not read. I mean, it was a beautiful map and it had lots of beautiful colors and it had a scale about all the different colors and what they meant. It was Chinese to us, really. And we took this map along to our meeting with Patrick and we said, Patrick, is this even possible? And he said, it is possible, but you need to do it in the right soil conditions. You need to be in Malmesbury residual soils. And he said, those are the green areas on the map. And that's all we focused on were the green areas on the map, and then realized that ideally we needed some sort of an infrastructure around the site. A friend of mine suggested Lawrenceford. And we looked at other sites as well, but just being on Lawrenceford with security and infrastructure and places to eat and drink allowed to make a whole day out. So we did a test dig, 2nd of April 2022, and the groundwater was at 5 meters. So we knew at that point that we could dig down to 5 meters.
Brad and Marina had this idea of an immersive experience and were starting to round up people and resources to give life to what they were conjuring up in their minds.
It became clear we needed a production and an ops manager, a geotechnical engineer for the earth piece and a structural engineer for the roof. We needed somebody who could translate Brad's vision of the experience in the space in terms of like lighting and sound. This is the dream team. We're making this happen. Yeah.
The day I met Marina was the day that I knew that this would be a special project and that I wanted to be a part of it. She's complicated. And she's dynamic. And she's exceptionally clever. And she's got a beautiful heart. And she's got a stern voice. And she can be firm. But she's also a nurturer.
Big basement structures will often have their foundations going all the way down into the basements and then coming all the way up. The EARTHBOX is the other way around. We're going all the way into the ground with no foundations, and our foundations are sitting on the top. That's where it gets quite critical in terms of that engineering, that you can put it at the surface and control any ground movement that occurs in those surface soils.
Initially we wanted to go down 6, but we can't because we hit water. So what we talked about was actually using some of the excavated earth to help raise the roof.
Ground is rising up around you before you headed down at all.
You don't see where you're going down, but you see that eventually you're just going to disappear.
We had to do a ceremony of groundbreaking to acknowledge this space we are in, to acknowledge the entities and the people and the land that this EARTHBOX is being established, to prepare and ask permission to use this space to be able to find peace, silence, and self into the land itself. Marina and Brett came to speak to us about
Our creative vision in creating
this is the dream they have and this is what they would like to do. So they wanted to find different meaningful ways, very gentle ways to be able to realize the dream itself, but also to be kind to this space, to this land, and to intention and create a vibration in this space for people who come here can perhaps feel the energy of this space itself.
You're standing, feeling the ground beneath your feet. You're very intentional of what outcomes of this project for you and everyone else who's going to come in this space. All we ask is that just be pure in your intention, be kind about them, and be good about them. Come on. Thank you.
Typically the rainy season is June, July, August, and some of September. The idea was that we would do the excavation during the dry months, and then during the wet months, we'd have it closed. Except little did we know that in 2023, it started raining in March, which is usually still very much a summer month, and we'd only excavated 1 meter. And the rain started, and the site became very muddy and very challenging to work in. The drainage plan that we had was not adequate to deal with what we had coming our way.
Cape Town, it's notorious, there's groundwater issues. We have the winter period, which is severe.
This project was designed to have a supported box on the top half of it, which would then serve as the lateral support, holding the box open. On top of a section that was unsupported, we had planned to pre-excavate down. Once we reached that point, we were inside the water table. This is a clay ground, which in its own stands up when you excavate it. The problem came is when you saturate the clay. It's not like normal soil that drains itself. It saturates and it actually holds the water, becomes a porridge.
Myself and Paul, our site manager, we have a weekly meeting set with the farm owners. On a Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock, we'd be standing on the site in the pouring rain, and they would start saying, "This is the most rain we've had in 2 years." And we'd come back the next week and they'd be saying, "This is the most rain we've had in 5 years." Toward the end, they were saying, "This is the most rain we've had in 105 years.
I think we're experiencing some more bad weather. Yes, like, how much can it rain?
We set about a major dewatering operation, big excavations.
Surface drains was installed everywhere. We had continuously sunken sumps that we had to pump out, which is nothing new in construction, pumping out the water. But pumping out the water half the day to work the other half the day because your inflow is of such magnitude, that was the problem.
The capacity of the pumps struggled to remove the water, or they became clogged, or due to load shedding, they cut off. Once you form a hole in the ground, any water will always migrate to that hole.
We decided to dig this huge drain outside of this cut-off curtain, and the weather just got worse. This drain should have been put in place like right at the beginning, and now we're like in the middle of winter trying to dig a 7-meter deep trench, and the excavator's getting stuck in the mud, and that's happened like 3-4 times already. What was supposed to be a 4-meter wide trench quickly became a 6-meter wide trench. We can't excavate any further in the box because the groundwater is too high, and without a drain we won't be able to move forward, and the current soil conditions mean that we can't move forward on the drain because the machines are getting stuck. We're kind of here in the mud without a plan, and with experts who have yet to convince me that they know what they're doing and they can actually solve this, because if we don't get this next move right, I don't think we'll be able to go ahead with this. This first proposal sounds very risky to me on a lot of levels. We need to consider all the options, and I also want to get in other opinions before we decide how we're going to move forward. I'm not making a rash decision today. We need to work as a team to find a solution to move forward. Everybody around this table has invested way too much time and way too much effort in this project. This is a critical make or break situation. I go from raging and angry to frustrated to wanting to cry to laughing hysterically, and then being really calm that it's all going to work out. So pick your moment, pick your day. It will be any one of those. they couldn't finish it. Conditions were so terrible that it just wasn't possible. And I remember a phone call from the construction consultant one evening, and he just said, "Marina, we're just going to have to postpone this another year." He said, "We're not going to make it. This isn't going to work out."
One of the things that I think is just phenomenal and key to the manifesting of EARTHBOX has been Marina's tenacity. She didn't buckle. She kept going. That fortitude, that stamina, that determination, that grit, phenomenal.
I spoke to Paul, and then I just said, actually, you know, we need to get another geotechnical engineer to have a look at what we've done, what we're trying to do, and we need a second opinion on how we can move forward and if it's possible to move forward. And Patrick and I came out here in the pouring rain with a consulting geotech firm, and we just took them through the project. And they said, you just need to start digging. You need to start using the space as a drain, not trying to create a drain outside of it. And that was the key.
We just continued the excavation and dealt with the water that was flowing directly into the excavation, as opposed to trying to dewater the general area.
Once we figured that out, we had to constantly just keep the place dry. We had pumps running 24/7 because this was like a swimming pool.
Even after we had changed our approach, it was a constant battle against inflowing water.
Over the millions of years in geological history, rivers, especially here with the mountains, running off the ravines, running down the gullies, over time they get buried. They can be quite deep in the ground, they can be big, small. The tricky part dealing with gullies or paleo channels that are in the ground is that they still bear water. They still allow the transmission of water to move through quite freely. And that can be very difficult to control. We had about 3 of them and one large one on the north side of the EARTHBOX where the water comes down from the mountainside.
The entry passage excavation intercepted a water course, and that was a lot of water. There was a crazy period when there was a machine in the chamber and there was a machine in what became the exit passage shoveling soup to each other. It was just soupy sludge that they were passing one bowl at a time out of the space to move beyond that point.
If you look around you today inside the chamber, it looks dry. If those pumps weren't there, within about 12 hours we'd have water up to around our knees. So that just gives you some sort of sense of what the groundwater situation is. But we couldn't put in permanent pumps at that stage. Very often pumps would be set up and running in the evening when the contractor left, and by the morning something would have happened that the pumps would have got choked, or the electricity supply would have been cut off for 6 hours or even up to 8 hours during the course of the night. And you come back and you're flooded again, and now you've got to pump out before you can even start work. Even though we had a method which was going to enable us to complete the project, it was certainly not just plain sailing from there.
The guys were on standby. Any dry hours they had to work because we were already so far behind schedule. We'd lost so much time because of the weather. I mean, initially we thought it was going to take a month to do this. I mean, you're like, how complicated could it be? You're just excavating some earth. Yeah. People got fed up. People were done. People were exhausted. They were tired. There was a time when the construction people were so fed up. I was just worried that they were going to just down tools and just walk off the site, and I was going to be left with a unfinished site that nobody was going to be able to fix.
We had massive trucks getting stuck, and we had to just down tools and say, tomorrow we're going to try again. And that's what we did throughout this very, very tough period.
somehow things just clicked. And I don't know whether that was on the mega mystical level, the Earth going, okay, I've tested you enough. Things suddenly started glowing and coming together, and it just seemed to gain momentum from then.
There's 200 millimeters of sand or soil on top of the roof. So that's much, much more load than one normally designs a roof for. Where the roof structure is supported at the edges, one had to be quite careful because of the weight of especially the ends of the roof trusses, but also the ends of the beams over the passages, that the soil below where that load is applied doesn't collapse. And eventually we actually use the big beam that distributes the load evenly.
What the weather was causing, our landscaping and our operational phase, which was meant to be 3 months, was cut by 2/3. So we had 1 month effectively. The lights, the soundscape, the landscaping, the staffing that needed to be appointed and trained. This site was crawling with humans. And they worked day and night tirelessly.
The best thing, I think, was the look on Hen Lien's face when she first came into the chamber, when the lighting was on. She walked in and she just burst into tears. Just like kind of raw feeling of an emotion of like, oh, so this is what we have been working on.
Rivers have different degrees of power and intensity. During intense rainfall period, you get pebbles and cobbles that will be moved with relative ease and deposited in the ground. Then, as the river slows down, it tends to deposit the finer materials like clay, like the rings of a tree. The earth has rings of geology. And as we go deeper into the ground, it gets older. What we have on the bottom of the earth box, what we call the Malmesbury material, is more clay, silty in nature. It's very unique. It stands out from the top recent layers, you know, the pebbles and that. When we talk recent geology like the upper fine river deposits and that, we're talking 40, 50,000 years. When you're talking about the Malmesbury, you start talking millions of years. You're standing on something that no person in millions of years has actually stood on or seen.
Traces of water still trickling through on invisible rivers and waterways that weave their way, in fact, through the chamber. The rocky features of these two gullies on either side of us are a watercourse that carries seasonal water and has done for hundreds of thousands of years, in fact millions of years. The iron oxide in the walls gives it this red colour. The yellowish colour is silt and fine granules that have been weathered off mountains in the region.
We all need a space where we can find quiet, where we can connect with ourselves. And there's something about clay, ground, earth, and there's something about touching clay itself or feeling the earth beneath your feet, which brings you to calm, that brings you to be grounded. Slowly coming under the ground and smell the earth, touch the clay, which is like a grandmother. This is the earth that has been here, not touched for the longest of time. So when you touch and smell it, it feels like you're connecting to yourself, yes, but the ancient self, you're connected to your ancestors, so to say.
To actually be present in an ancient space that is raw, that hasn't been doctored, that hasn't been preserved in any way. We just revealed what was always here. We could have never imagined how beautiful what it is we've unearthed here.
The most challenging part of this piece really is that it's quiet and slow when we're addicted to speed and noise. And this evening it may be a particularly tall task as we make fanfare for something so quiet. We dress up for something that is stripped back. To experience something together that is really, in the end, quite individual.
So when we got to the launch, it took a while for it to land that we were here, that we'd gotten to the point where we could actually open on time. That just blew my mind, actually. We've been working so hard to keep it going, to keep it moving. Just realizing what we've achieved as a team, it's extraordinary. We've created magic.
The experience of EARTHBOX as a physical environment commences before you enter the physical environment. You get a glimmer and a hint, perhaps through an image you see online, an ephemeral moment that might reach someone with the beginnings of their EARTHBOX experience, so that when they come, they're already tuned.
People are seeking personal validation outside of themselves. I really wanted to create a space that invited a more internal experience. People cope in our society today by numbing themselves out. We're just bombarded with so much that it becomes a kind of a coping mechanism. But if we don't allow ourselves to feel, then we can't feel the good things either.
The experience of EARTHBOX would always come down to the details. That the final choices and decisions about the finishing touches would make or break the quality of the experience. The meander through the garden is an opportunity to change state. That landscape is created with the earth excavated out of the chamber and sculpted into berms that are sympathetic to the mountains, so that the site has a sense of relation to the mountains.
I've never looked at the mountains for what they are. So for me to come here, and especially after listening to the audio tour, it put that into perspective for me. With every step you are moving back into time, and you feel how you almost disconnect with your own reality, which I found very healing and very inspiring.
Once you approach the entry passage, it curves slowly out of sight and into darkness. Maybe a little buzz of anticipation as you step into the cool, into the shadow. And then there's a degree of sensory deprivation, a kind of stripping away of blue and green and insect noises and birds and traffic, and all of that goes. And there are fewer color frequencies, more specific sounds, aiming to help you be right here. As you come back to the surface, the brightness of the light and the punch of those colors, and pa-ba, the mountains are brought back to you. You go, ah, wow.
It's such a bad day and a long day at work, but what this has felt like for me is a healing experience. Coming here, being so close to nature, washing our hands, touching the earth, being grounded, it's been magical. I feel like I left all the stress and all the baggage I came with here. I left it in the ground and I left feeling so much lighter.
down near the bottom of the wall is when our ancestors of early human form started to walk upright. This many million years took place after that. Fire and hunting in groups is about a meter or so up the wall. Homo sapiens emerging is near the top of the wall. And the last 10,000 years are in the topsoil. So our current existence on Earth as a civilization, as humanity now, is a blink of the eye. At some point, the evidence of us and this now will be deep down.
Everybody's like, no, this needs to be here more than 6 months. From really early on when we talked to the engineers, there was a big question mark around how the raw earth walls would react during the winter months and whether they would maintain their integrity. And so we always decided it was going to be a 6-month project. The plan was always to take everything that we've put into the space out and then put back the layers of earth the way we excavated them and remediate the whole field back to its former state.
I think the experience that people have will largely depend on what they bring in with them. And some people will walk in here and say, what's the big deal, and walk straight out the other side again and just say, so what? And others will look more carefully and look at the walls and wonder about the shapes and wonder about the material and ask questions either of themselves or somebody else around them as to what happened here, how did this get here, how old is it, what is the origin. And some people will, I would imagine, just have a sense of wonder, a sense of awe. Yeah, I would hope that people maybe think a little bit more carefully about the world they live in and understand its complexity and understand its great age and have some reverence really for the place we live.
Ooh.